Every Friday at exactly 4 o'clock in the afternoon, CEO Astrid Sterling watched the janitor vanish without a word. At first, she thought he was lazy, slipping out early to avoid the last hour of his shift. Then she suspected something darker. Corporate espionage, perhaps. A mole feeding competitors. On a rain-soaked evening in late October, she followed him through the suburbs, past strip malls and quiet neighborhoods, all the way to a cemetery, St. Bartholomew Cemetery, a place she hadn't dared step foot in for 10 years. Beneath an old oak tree, its branches bare against the gray sky, the janitor stood perfectly still, like a soldier at attention. Like a guard, buried there, alongside Astrid's own nightmare, was the secret she herself had buried deep. One that could destroy everything she'd built, everything she'd become. If that secret is tied to the CEO's own dark past, would you have the courage to open the box she buried so deep? The Sterling Dynamics Tower rose from the edge of a pine forest, like a blade of dark glass and steel. 40 stories of controlled power. Inside, the air was always cold, filtered, and recycled. The lights were always clinical, casting sharp shadows across minimalist furniture and polished floors. Astrid Sterling, 34 years old with platinum blonde waves that fell just past her shoulders and steel-gray eyes that could cut through lies and excuses alike, ruled this empire with absolute control. She had built Sterling Dynamics into a leader in defense technology and civilian applications, transforming a mid-tier contractor into a billion-dollar powerhouse. And she had done it by never, ever, looking back. But there was a crack in her armor, a fault line she'd tried to seal with work and ambition and sheer force of will. 10 years ago, her younger brother Owen had died in what the company officially called an experimental explosion during routine testing. A tragic accident, they said. Unforeseen complications. Nothing more. The investigation had been brief, the conclusions tidy. After Owen's death, Astrid had thrown herself into work with manic intensity, turning grief into power, pain into control, loss into an empire. Her philosophy became simple, brutal in its clarity. Truth is useless if it can't protect the people you love. And since truth hadn't saved Owen, she'd learned to control the narrative instead. There was one place she could never go, St. Bartholomew Cemetery, where Owen was buried beneath the roots of an old oak tree on the eastern slope. She hadn't visited his grave in a decade. She told herself it was about moving forward, about strength. But late at night, when the office was empty and the city lights blurred through her window, she knew it was cowardice. She was afraid of what she might feel, afraid of what she might remember. The company was under pressure. A $420 million government contract hung in the balance. The kind of deal that could cement Sterling Dynamics' position for the next decade. The product about to launch, Helios Mark II, was a directed energy system designed for civilian rescue operations. Evolved from an older prototype. Security audits loomed. Whispers of leaked blueprints circulated in the hallways like poison. The board was restless, hungry, demanding results. Henry Wilcox, the 55-year-old chairman of the board, was a shark in an expensive suit. He cared only about profit margins, quarterly reports, and keeping shareholders happy. Vivian Harper, the 38-year-old CFO, was cold and precise. A woman who saw human beings as line items on a spreadsheet. She was loyal to numbers rather than people, to efficiency rather than ethics. Only Serena Blake, Astrid's 33-year-old executive assistant, seemed to care about the truth beneath the surface. Serena was brilliant, strategic, and fiercely loyal to Astrid in ways that went beyond a paycheck. And then there was Liam Carter. Liam was 36, quiet as a held breath, methodical in ways that bordered on ritualistic. He worked the afternoon janitorial shift, moving through the building like a shadow, like someone who'd learned to be invisible. He wore old fabric gloves, permanently stained with cleaning solution. He carried a scratched brass lighter in his pocket, though no one ever saw him smoke. He kept a small leather wallet, worn soft with age, that held a broken military badge inside. He never caused trouble. He never asked for anything. He did his job and left. But every Friday at 4 o'clock, he disappeared. Not casually. Not gradually. At 4 o'clock precisely, Liam Carter would set down whatever he was doing, remove his gloves, and walk out of Sterling Dynamics like a man with an appointment he couldn't miss. Security cameras caught him once. Just a glimpse. Passing through the engineering wing. With a temporary access badge. Astrid noticed, because she noticed everything. It was her superpower and her curse. Why would a janitor walk through that corridor on a Friday afternoon? The engineering wing was restricted. The temporary badge was only issued for specific maintenance work, and there was no maintenance scheduled. The question gnawed at her like a splinter working deeper into skin. Then the internal audit flagged something. Ghost access traces in the old Helios Alpha Project archive. The system that had been shut down 10 years ago after Owen's death. The timestamps matched Liam's Friday departures exactly. The access point was near the engineering wing restroom, right where Liam worked his shift. The pattern was too precise to be coincidence. Serena brought the report to Astrid's office on a Tuesday morning, her expression careful. We should report this to security. If someone's accessing classified archives, especially Helios Alpha, we need to lock it down immediately. Astrid stared at the data on her screen, watching the ghost traces light up like breadcrumbs, leading to a truth she wasn't sure she wanted to find. No, she said finally. Not yet, Astrid. If there's a breach, I'll handle it. Astrid's voice was steel wrapped in ice. I'll follow him myself. I need to know what he's doing before we bring anyone else in. Serena hesitated, then nodded. She knew better than to push when Astrid used that tone. The rain came down in sheets that Friday, turning the city into a watercolor blur. Astrid followed Liam's battered pickup truck from 3 cars back. Her wipers slapping against the windshield in a frantic rhythm. Her hands gripped the wheel. Her heart pounded louder than the rain hammering her roof. Road signs blurred past. Suburban neighborhoods gave way to older areas, then to open land. Then she saw it. The wrought iron gates, the stone pillars, St. Bartholomew's Cemetery. Her chest tightened like a fist closing around her lungs. Her hands went cold. This was the place she'd avoided for 10 years. The place where Owen's body was buried. The place where her carefully constructed walls had been built to keep her away. She parked far back, hands shaking now, and grabbed a black umbrella from the back seat. She followed on foot, shoes sinking into mud, rain soaking through her coat. Through the downpour, she saw him, Liam Carter, standing beneath the oak tree, the same tree she remembered from Owen's funeral. He was placing a bundle of white lilies at its roots, with the careful precision of ritual. Then he stood perfectly still, head slightly bowed, for exactly 4 minutes. She timed it on her watch. 4 minutes. Not 3. Not 5. 4. Like it was a promise. Like it was a vigil. Astrid's heart pounded so hard she thought he might hear it over the rain. She recognized the area now, the slope, the angle of the headstones. Owen's grave was just beyond that tree, marked by a simple granite stone. She stepped closer, mud clinging to her expensive shoes, rain running down her face. That's when she saw it, a patch of damp earth near the roots, freshly disturbed, as if someone had dug there recently and tried to cover their tracks. Her mind raced, spinning theories like a machine in overdrive. Was Liam blackmailing her? Had he found something buried here? Was he a corporate spy using her brother's grave as a dead drop, hiding stolen data in the one place he knew she'd never visit? The audacity of it made her furious. The violation of it made her sick. She made her first mistake. On Monday morning, she ordered Serena to freeze Liam's building access. No explanation given, no warning. She told herself it was about security, about protecting the company. Henry and Vivian were pleased. One less risk to worry about, they said. One less variable in the equation. But the image of Liam standing at that grave wouldn't leave her mind. It played on repeat through meetings, through phone calls, through sleepless nights. She pulled out an old photo from her desk drawer, one she'd kept face down for years because looking at it hurt too much. Owen, smiling that crooked smile, standing next to a young soldier with brown hair and intense eyes. They were in desert camouflage, arms around each other's shoulders. Brothers in arms, the photo seemed to say. The soldier's face looked painfully familiar. The jawline. The set of the shoulders. The way he held himself. It looked exactly like a younger Liam Carter. Astrid couldn't sleep that night. Questions circled like vultures. At 2 in the morning, she got dressed, grabbed supplies from the garage, and drove back to St. Bartholomew Cemetery. She carried a flashlight, gloves, and a folding shovel. Rain had turned the ground soft earlier in the week. And now, in the dark, the cemetery felt like another world entirely. The beam of her flashlight caught words carved into old headstones, names of the dead watching her trespass. At the base of the oak tree, where the earth was disturbed, she began to dig. The soil came away easily. Too easily. Someone had definitely been here before. Her fingers hit metal. She pulled out a military-grade lockbox, rusted at the edges but sealed tight with a combination lock. She tried Owen's birthday. It clicked open. Inside, she found 3 things that would change everything. A handwritten letter from Owen, ink smudged with water and time, but still legible. A USB drive wrapped carefully in oilcloth, preserved against moisture, and a patch note in Owen's handwriting, technical and desperate. Helios, alpha, resonance error, explosion risk beyond threshold, X, safety bypass equals death sentence. The letter was addressed to A. To her. Astrid's hands shook as she unfolded the paper, her flashlight beam casting wavering shadows across her brother's last words. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it in time to tell you everything. I tried to stop it. I tried to make them listen, but they wouldn't. They pushed the test forward anyway. If something happens to me, you need to know the truth. Liam didn't betray anyone. He tried to save me. He took the wound that was meant for you. Keep him close. Trust him. He's the only one who knows the whole story. I'm sorry I couldn't be stronger. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this. But maybe, if you're reading this, it means you're finally strong enough to carry it. I love you, A. Always. Owen. The words blurred. Astrid's entire framework of suspicion, every careful theory she'd constructed, collapsed inward like a building demolition. Every arrow she'd pointed at Liam was now aimed directly at herself. She'd fired him. She'd suspected him of espionage, of blackmail, of violating her brother's memory. She'd been so catastrophically wrong. Then she heard footsteps behind her, boots crunching on wet leaves. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness, pinning her in its glare. Liam's voice was quiet but firm, carrying the weight of 10 years. You found it. I was wondering when you would. Astrid turned, rain starting to fall again, the lockbox clutched in her hands like evidence of her own guilt. Liam stood there, drenched, wearing the same old jacket, the same worn gloves. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't vindictive. It was sad. Deeply, profoundly sad. You should have told me, Astrid said, her voice breaking, raw with emotion she'd kept locked away for a decade. Liam shook his head slowly. You weren't ready, and the people who needed to hide this would have destroyed the evidence the moment you got close. I've been protecting this for 10 years. Protecting you. Waiting for the right time. The right time? Astrid's voice rose. My brother died 10 years ago, and you've been standing over his grave every Friday like some kind of silent guardian, and you never said a word to me, because Owen asked me not to. Liam's voice was steel beneath velvet. He made me promise, and I keep my promises. They stood in the cemetery, 2 people bound by a ghost and a buried truth, rain falling harder now. Finally, Astrid spoke again, softer this time. Tell me everything. All of it. No more secrets. Liam took a breath. His voice was steady, but pain threaded through every word like a scar that never fully healed. 10 years ago, Owen and I were part of the engineering team testing Helios Alpha. We were both young, both stupid enough to think we could change things from the inside. There was a resonance flaw in the system, something we discovered during preliminary tests. The energy output would cascade under certain conditions, creating a feedback loop that could lead to catastrophic failure. We flagged it. We wrote reports. We begged them to delay the test. He paused, rain dripping from his hair, his eyes distant with memory. But the higher-ups pushed us to cut the safety protocols. Deadlines, investor pressure, a government contract that demanded results yesterday. They told us we were being overcautious. They told us the math was fine. They told us to bypass the final safety checks and run the live test anyway. Astrid felt her knees weaken. She knew what was coming. The system went critical during the test run. Owen saw it coming before I did. He'd been monitoring the readout, watching the numbers climb into the red zone. When the containment unit started to fail, he shoved me behind a blast shield. He put himself between me and the explosion. Liam's voice cracked. He died 3 minutes later. I survived with a shattered shoulder, permanent hearing damage in my left ear, and the knowledge that someone had to pay for what happened. But I couldn't prove it. Not then. All the evidence was being scrubbed in real time. Astrid felt tears running down her face, mixing with rain. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you come to me? Liam's jaw tightened. Because the evidence trail led to executives still in power. Henry Wilcox, Vivian Harper. Others. If I'd spoken up then, they would have buried it, destroyed the files, discredited me as a disgruntled employee, and maybe come after you, too. You were young. You'd just lost your brother. You didn't have the power to fight them. So, I waited. I took a job here as janitorial staff, stayed in the shadows, and I kept the promise I made to Owen before he died. What promise? Astrid whispered. He made me swear something in those last minutes. He said, keep Astrid safe from this until she's strong enough to face it. Stand watch over my grave. Don't let them forget. So that's what I did. Every Friday at 4 o'clock. The same time Owen used to cover my shift. So I could visit my sick mother. I go to his grave. I stand. Watch. I keep the promise. Astrid looked down at the USB drive in her hand. What's on this? System logs from the day of the explosion. Internal emails showing the pressure to bypass safety. A signed memo from Henry Wilcox, approving the shortcut. Financial records showing payments to consultants who signed off on the flawed design. And the infrastructure map showing ghost data access routes built into Helios Alpha, the same routes being used in Helios Mark II right now. Astrid's voice was barely a whisper. They rebranded it. They're about to launch the same flawed system under a new name. Liam met her eyes. That's why I stayed. That's why I waited. I needed you to be in a position where you could stop it, where you had the authority and the resources to fight back. And I needed you to be strong enough to handle the truth about what really killed your brother. Astrid stepped forward and, for the first time in 10 years, let herself cry in front of another human being. Not the controlled tears of a funeral, not the silent tears of late nights alone. Real, ugly, gasping sobs. I'm sorry. I thought you were the enemy. I fired you. I suspected you of the worst things. You were protecting your company, Liam said quietly. You were doing what you thought was right. That's what leaders do. Astrid wiped her face, rain and tears impossible to distinguish. Will you help me now? Will you help me finish what Owen started? Liam extended his hand, scarred and strong. I gave Owen my word. That includes this. That includes you. They shook hands in the rain, beneath the oak tree where a decade-old promise had been kept in absolute silence. Astrid made a decision that would change everything. We're going to take them down. All of them. Henry, Vivian, everyone who knew. We're going to make sure Owen didn't die for nothing. The plan was built in 3 layers. Astrid, Liam, and Serena met in a secure location off-site, a rented office space 3 miles from Sterling Dynamics, away from company surveillance and prying eyes. Layer 1. Data security. They created an air-gapped drive, a physical device with no network connection, and copied every file from Owen's USB. Every log, every email, every technical specification. Serena handled the digital forensics, isolating timestamps and metadata that would hold up in court, creating a chain of custody that couldn't be broken. Layer 2. Legal anchor. Astrid contacted William Rhodes, a 41-year-old federal prosecutor she'd worked with on compliance issues 3 years earlier. He was known for being incorruptible, a man who'd turned down lucrative private sector offers to stay in public service. She arranged a private meeting, handed him a copy of the evidence, and asked him to timestamp it officially. If anything happened to them, if they disappeared or had accidents, the files would still surface. The truth would still come out. Layer 3. The trap. They created a fake blueprint for Helios Mark II with embedded digital fingerprints, unique technical signatures that would trace anyone who accessed the file. Then they leaked it through the ghost access route, baiting whoever was behind the data theft. It was a gamble, but it was a gamble they had to take. The resistance came fast and vicious. Vivian Harper pulled Astrid aside one morning in the executive hallway, her voice like ice cracking. "I heard you've been asking questions about the old Helios project. That's not wise. Don't dig into archived programs. You'll lose the contract. You'll lose investor confidence. You'll lose everything." Henry Wilcox was more direct. He cornered her in the boardroom after a meeting. "We're running the Mark II demo next Thursday. No delays, no second guessing, no cold feet. This company needs this win, Astrid. Your brother would have wanted you to succeed." The invocation of Owen's name made Astrid's blood boil, but she kept her face neutral. Of course, no delays. Then the threats turned personal. Liam's truck tires were slashed after his evening shift. All 4 of them, clean cuts that couldn't be accidental. A note was left on his windshield, laser printed with no identifying marks. "Stay away from the graves on Fridays. This is your only warning." Serena discovered something else while digging through financial records late one night. Vivian had been hiding quarterly payments to a shell company called Helios Partners LLC. The money trail led nowhere officially, routed through 3 different offshore accounts, but the timing matched the ghost access logs perfectly. Someone was being paid to keep secrets. Someone was profiting from silence. They were close. Too close. And the people they were hunting knew it. The night of the server room incident changed everything. It was a Thursday, 11:30 at night, and the Sterling Dynamics building should have been nearly empty. Astrid, Liam, and Serena had stayed behind, working in a small conference room, backing up final pieces of evidence from the engineering archives. They were careful. They were methodical. They thought they were safe. Then the fire suppression system activated without warning. Sprinklers erupted across the server floor on the 3rd level, flooding equipment, soaking cables, drowning electronics in thousands of gallons of water. It wasn't an accident. It was a coordinated attack, a digital purge designed to destroy evidence. Alarms screamed. Red lights flashed. Serena grabbed the air-gapped drive from the table and ran toward the north stairwell. Liam sprinted to the document archive on the 2nd floor, trying to secure the physical logs stored in locked filing cabinets. Astrid triggered the emergency lighting override and sealed the server room doors remotely from her phone, buying them precious seconds. But Vivian was there. She appeared in the chaos like a ghost, wearing a black coat, holding what looked like their backup drive. She offered it to Serena, her voice urgent. "Come on. We need to get this out before it's destroyed. Follow me." Liam saw it first. He was coming up the stairs, shoulder throbbing, when he caught sight of them. Something was wrong. The case Vivian was holding, it was the right size, the right color, but the small scratch that marked their real drive, a deliberate imperfection they'd added as verification, was missing. Vivian had swapped it. She had a duplicate. She was stealing their evidence. "Serena, stop." Liam's voice cut through the alarm noise, but Vivian was already running. She turned and sprinted toward the emergency exit, the fake drive clutched in her hand. Liam chased her through the emergency stairs, water streaming down the steps from the sprinkler system, red emergency lights flashing in syncopated rhythm. His shoulder ached, the old injury flaring with every movement, shrapnel and scar tissue screaming protest. He caught up to her in the parking garage, just as she reached her sleek black sedan. "Give it back," Liam said, breathing hard, blocking her path to the driver's door. Vivian smiled coldly. A predator's smile. "Give what back? You think Astrid will choose truth over survival?" She's spent 10 years running from the truth. She'll run again. Astrid's voice cut through the garage like a whip crack. I'm done running. She stepped out from behind a concrete support pillar, drenched from the sprinklers, furious in ways Vivian had never seen. Astrid Sterling, the controlled CEO, was gone. This was someone else. Someone angrier. Someone more dangerous. Vivian's smile faltered. You'll destroy the company. You'll lose the contract. You'll lose everything you've built. I already lost everything that mattered, Astrid said, her voice low and deadly. 10 years ago, in an explosion that you helped cause, Vivian lunged for her car door. But Liam was faster. He grabbed the bag containing the real drive, the one Vivian had tried to hide under her coat. Wrenching it from her grip, she fought back, nails clawing at his injured shoulder. He gasped in pain, but held on. A security guard appeared from the shadows, one of the off-books hires that Henry kept on a separate payroll. He had a metal baton. He swung hard, catching Liam across the same shoulder that had never fully healed, the shoulder that still carried shrapnel from Owen's sacrifice. Liam went down hard, blood seeping through his shirt, dark and immediate. Astrid screamed. She dropped to her knees beside him, pressing her hands against the wound. Rain and blood mixing on the concrete. Stay with me. We're finishing this. You don't get to die before we finish this. Liam's face was pale, shock setting in, but his grip on the drive bag was firm. Get it to Rhodes. Do it now. Don't wait. Astrid pulled out her phone, hands shaking with adrenaline and fear, and called the prosecutor. William, it's Astrid Sterling. It's time. We have everything. The evidence is complete. Meet me at the federal building in 1 hour. If I don't show up, if anything happens to me, you know what to do. Vivian tried to flee, tried to get to her car and disappear into the night. But Serena had already called the real authorities. Not company security. Police cars arrived, sirens cutting through the rain, blue lights painting the garage walls. Vivian was stopped at the garage exit ramp, officers surrounding her vehicle. In her trunk, they found the shell company ledger, the payments, all the financial evidence she'd been trying to destroy. An ambulance came for Liam. Paramedics worked fast, stopping the bleeding, stabilizing his shoulder. Astrid rode with him, holding his hand, refusing to let go. You kept your promise to Owen, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Now, I'm keeping mine to both of you. The demo was scheduled for the following Thursday. Press, government officials, potential investors, all gathered in the Sterling Dynamics main auditorium, a space designed to impress with its scale and its technology. The room buzzed with anticipation, conversations flowing around displays of the Helios Mark II prototype. This was supposed to be the company's triumphant moment, the launch that would secure their future for years to come. Henry Wilcox stood at the podium, wearing his most expensive suit, smiling his most confident smile. Today, we honor the legacy of safety and innovation that Sterling Dynamics was built on. Today, we show the world what the future looks like. The irony was suffocating. Astrid sat in the front row, her expression carefully neutral. Liam was in the back, his shoulder bandaged beneath his jacket, his arm in a discreet sling. Serena was positioned near the media control booth, finger hovering over a laptop keyboard. Henry handed the presentation over to Astrid with a grand gesture. Our CEO will walk you through the technical specifications. Astrid took the stage. The lights dimmed. Her first slide appeared on the massive screen behind her. A resonance graph, technical and damning. It looked almost identical to the Helios Alpha failure chart, the one Owen had tried to warn them about. This, Astrid said, her voice calm and clear and carrying to every corner of the room, is what happens when safety protocols are ignored. The room went silent. Confused glances were exchanged. Henry's smile froze on his face. Astrid advanced the slide. An internal memo appeared, scanned and enlarged. Henry's signature was clear at the bottom. Bypass final safety review. Proceed to live test. Deadline is non-negotiable. Approved. H. Wilcox. She looked directly at Henry, her gray eyes like steel. 10 years ago, This decision killed my brother. Owen Sterling died in an explosion that was entirely preventable. And the system we're about to launch today has the same fundamental flaw. The room erupted. Reporters started shouting questions. Investors stood from their seats. Henry stood too, face going red. This is absurd. This is sabotage. Security. Escort Miss Sterling from the stage immediately. But Serena had already triggered the next part of the plan. The screen changed. Footage played. Recovered from Owen's USB. Digitally restored. Owen Sterling and Liam Carter in the lab, 10 years younger, faces tense, pointing at readouts that showed the resonance flaw. Then, the memo. Then a recording of a board meeting where Henry dismissed safety concerns as overcautious hand-wringing that would cost them the contract. Astrid's voice rang out over the chaos. Helios. Mark II uses the same core architecture as the system that killed Owen. The same ghost access routes. The same safety shortcuts. I'm halting this demo effective immediately. And I'm requesting a full federal investigation into Sterling Dynamics and everyone involved in the cover-up. Henry shouted for security. Guards moved toward the stage, uncertain. The room was pure chaos now. Investors shouting, journalists filming everything. Employees watching their world collapse in real time. Then the doors at the back of the auditorium opened. William Rhodes walked in, flanked by federal agents wearing badges and carrying folders thick with warrants. Mr. Henry Wilcox. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of criminal negligence, corporate fraud, and obstruction of justice. Miss Vivian Harper is already in federal custody. The auditorium fell silent. You could hear breathing. You could hear hearts breaking. Henry's face went from red to white in seconds. An agent stepped forward, reading him his rights in a voice that carried through the space. Cameras flashed. Phones recorded. The carefully constructed facade of Sterling Dynamics, built on lies and shortcuts and buried bodies, shattered in real time. Astrid looked out over the crowd, over the faces of employees and investors and journalists. Her voice was steady, but emotion threaded through every word. Owen Sterling didn't die because of a low-level engineer's mistake. He didn't die because of bad luck or unforeseen complications. He died because leadership chose profit over safety. He died because people in power decided deadlines were more important than lives. Today, I'm choosing truth. Today, I'm choosing my brother's memory over this company's reputation. Some of the employees in the back rows were crying. A few started clapping. It spread slowly, uncertain at first, then stronger, building into something that sounded like relief and grief and hope all mixed together. The press exploded with headlines within minutes. CEO halts own product launch. To expose cover-up. Sterling Dynamics implodes as decade-old crime surfaces. The stock price plummeted. Trading was halted. The board demanded emergency meetings. Half wanted Astrid's immediate resignation. The other half wanted answers. Accountability. Truth. Astrid faced them all in the main conference room 2 days later, exhausted but resolute. We're shutting down the Helios program permanently. All versions, all derivatives. We're starting something new, the Owen Initiative. Open source safety standards. Transparent development processes. Independent oversight. No more shortcuts. No more secrets. The interim chairman, an older board member named Gregory Hale, leaned forward. You're asking us to abandon a $420 million contract. You're asking us to rebuild from nothing. Yes, Astrid said simply. I'm asking you to choose integrity over profit. I'm asking you to choose lives over money. I'm asking you to be the company my brother believed we could be. The vote was close, but it passed. 3 weeks later, on a Friday afternoon bathed in autumn sunlight, Astrid, Liam, and Serena returned to St. Bartholomew Cemetery. The rain had stopped days ago. The ground had dried. Sunlight filtered through the oak branches in golden streams. Astrid carried a small bronze plaque. She placed it carefully at the base of the tree, securing it with stakes. It read, "Here." A promise was kept for 10 years. Owen Sterling, beloved brother. brilliant engineer, guardian of truth. You are not forgotten. Liam stood beside her, his arm still in a sling but healing. He told her a story about Owen. Something light. Something human. Something that made Owen feel real again, instead of just a name on a gravestone. He made the worst burritos during night shifts. Absolutely terrible. But he'd make them anyway, because he was convinced he'd discovered the secret to gourmet fast food. He'd add curry powder and pineapple. It was a crime against cuisine. Astrid laughed. The sound strange and wonderful after so long. He really did think that. He tried to make me eat one once. I told him I loved him, but I loved my digestive system more. Serena handed Liam an envelope. Inside was an offer letter, formal and official. Head of Safety Engineering for the Owen Initiative. Full authority, full transparency, full autonomy. You earned it, Astrid said. Liam looked at the letter, then at the grave, then at Astrid. I'll take it, but I'm keeping my Friday schedule. Subly CX, Welly CX, Liam. Serena smiled. 4 o'clock grave visits? Liam shook his head. 4 o'clock tree planting. New tradition. They worked together, the three of them, digging a hole beside the old oak. They planted a young sapling, carefully transferring it from its pot, watering it, packing soil around its roots. The new tree stood small and fragile next to its ancient companion, but its roots would grow deep. One tree for the past, scarred and strong. One for the future, young and reaching toward light. As they finished, Astrid pressed her hand against the old oak's trunk. She spoke quietly, a whisper meant for the dead and the living alike. Thank you, Owen. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry I was afraid. But I'm not afraid anymore. She looked at Liam. He'd be proud of you. 10 years of standing watch. 10 years of keeping a promise no one else even knew about. Liam's voice was soft. He'd be proud of both of us. You found the courage to face it. That's what he was waiting for. They walked back to the cars together, three people bound by loss and courage and the choice to do what was right even when the cost was everything they'd built. The sunlight broke through the clouds fully now, golden and warm, painting the cemetery in shades of hope. Behind them, two trees stood side by side, roots intertwining beneath the earth where promises and secrets had been buried for too long. The truth hadn't destroyed them. It had set them free. Astrid Sterling returned to her office on Monday morning, not as the untouchable CEO who controlled everything, but as someone who had finally stopped running from the past. The company would rebuild. It would be smaller for a while. Some investors would leave. Some employees would seek more stable ground. But the contracts would come back, different ones, better ones, built on transparency instead of silence. The Owen Initiative would grow, and every Friday at 4 o'clock, Liam Carter would leave work and drive to St. Bartholomew Cemetery. But now, he wouldn't stand alone in silent vigil. Astrid would be there. Serena too, sometimes. They'd water the young oak. They'd sit beneath the old one. They'd tell stories about Owen, keeping his memory alive not through silence but through shared remembering. Because the best way to honor the dead isn't to bury the truth alongside them. It's to bring that truth into the light, no matter how painful, and let it grow into something that protects the living. Something that prevents the next Owen from dying. Something that turns sacrifice into legacy. In the end, the secret Astrid had buried wasn't just evidence of a corporate crime. It was her own guilt, her own fear, her own desperate need to believe that ignorance could somehow be protection, that not knowing could somehow be safety. Liam had guarded that secret for 10 years, not because it was his burden to carry, but because he understood something profound. Some truths can only be faced when the person carrying them is finally strong enough to lift the weight without being crushed. Astrid had become that person. She'd lost an empire's worth of security. She'd gained something infinitely more valuable, the ability to look at herself in the mirror without flinching, the ability to visit her brother's grave without drowning in shame, the ability to sleep at night, knowing she'd chosen right over easy. On a quiet evening months later, a journalist asked her in an interview if she regretted the decision to expose the cover-up, to destroy her company's reputation, to sacrifice hundreds of millions of dollars for the sake of a truth that wouldn't bring her brother back. Astrid looked out the window of her smaller, simpler office and thought about Owen's smile, about Liam's silent decade of loyalty, about the sapling growing strong beside the oak. "Regret?" she said finally. "No. For the first time in 10 years, I can breathe. For the first time since Owen died, I can look at his picture without feeling like I failed him. That's worth more than any contract. That's worth everything." The journalist wrote it down. The story went viral, shared thousands of times, discussed in boardrooms and classrooms and living rooms. People called her brave. People called her reckless. People called her a lot of things, but Liam Carter, standing beside a grave on a Friday afternoon, placing fresh white lilies at the roots of 2 trees, one old and one new, called her something simpler. He called her free. And that was the only title that mattered anymore.